Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, a female political correspondent was referred to as Totty by an unnamed Conservative MP. What he apparently said to the journalist was, as tweeted, "I want to talk to the Totty." She is Isabel Hardman, a frequent contributor to this programme, and her response was to complain to the Whip's office. She got an apology. But not everyone thinks the act was crime enough to merit that response. Another female journalist, Isabel Oakeshott, wrote in the Mail, "There is a case to be argued that she should have been pleased. After all, he expressed the inclination to talk to her over and above whoever else was there." Well, it's been called Tottygate on social media, but more than the usual Twitter spat, it raises that question about the frictions of social change across generations. Isabel Oakeshott is with me now, as is the columnist Jenny Russell of The Times. Good evening to you both. Did you really mean it? Did you really mean it, or were you trying to be provocative when you said possibly she should have been pleased at being called Totty?
Well, what I was saying is that as a political reporter, I think you have to have a pretty thick skin. I mean, politics is a rough old game, and politics and journalism, they're both rough old games. And our business is getting stories. That's always the focus of any interaction I'm having at work. And so, you know, personally, I'm prepared to put up with quite a lot in the pursuit of a story, and being called Totty doesn't even register for me on the Richter scale of offences.
What have you had to put up with?
Oh, I mean, all sorts over the years. I mean, I gave an example in the piece that I wrote for the Mail today of a senior MP, he's a Knight of the Realm. I named him, he's Sir Alan Duncan, happens to be gay, who pinched my bottom the other day. And I was rather surprised, but I didn't take offence at it. I thought this was just, you know, one of those things.
Jenny, first of all, should Isabel have taken offence at Alan Duncan pinching her bottom?
That's entirely Isabel's choice. I think the much more important point that Isabel Hardman was making was that the term that was used to her demeaned her. Right. And it didn't take her seriously as a political journalist. She's an absolutely outstanding political journalist. She was Political Journalist of the Year in the awards for the Political Studies Association. She's a really credible person. And what she was taking offence at was that somebody deciding to treat her in a demeaning fashion. Right. So treating her less seriously than the men around her. And if you just ignore this, as the other Isabel advocates, then nothing ever changes. I mean, you'd never have had a civil rights movement in America if you'd said, you know, black women shouldn't really mind being sent to the back of the bus. You wouldn't have had any gay rights movement if gays hadn't objected to being called faggots. You only have to put into that sentence, I want to talk to the Totty, the word Jew, or I want to talk to the faggot, or I want to talk to the N-word, to see immediately that that kind of language says you are a lesser person. And it's absolutely right that we should start demanding in 2015 that that kind of language isn't acceptable.
Or 2016 even.
Oh, sorry, 2016 even.
I totally disagree with you about the comparisons you make, and I think that the heart of the matter is this, that when the gentleman concerned used the word Totty, he meant it, however clumsily, he meant it as a compliment. The other words you used were clearly derogatory.
So you allege. It's also derogatory. It just says to somebody, I'm not treating you as a political journalist. I'm talking about you purely in sexual terms. Now, unless you start acting against that, women do not get taken seriously. And we know that because we had a century behind us of women being treated like that, right, going through the 50s, just going along with it, and nothing changed until women started saying publicly, don't treat us that way.
So just to be clear, because you made various suggestions of how you might behave in that situation, right, Isabel, and one of them was she could have written a note to him,
yes, or
could have said something to him,
yes,
personally. Now, am I assuming that wouldn't work for you, Jenny? She's got to make an issue of it, and a public issue, because otherwise it doesn't, in a way, tell everybody else this is unacceptable.
That's exactly the point. The point is that there's still an incredible amount of sexism going on. I know women working in offices now who are subject to something much worse than that, but they're unable to talk about it because they're powerless. And if they alienate the men who are working with them, they know they'll be punished for it. Now, Isabel was in the fantastic position of being strong enough and in a strong enough position to be able to call this out. So it doesn't rebound on her personally, and also has the advantage that it's now a public issue. Other men in the Commons, A, won't say it to her, B, won't say it to other journalists. And everybody is thinking about this issue now. A private note would have accomplished nothing in the matter of social change.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you know, I'm there to report stories. I'm a political commentator. I don't work for the Fawcett Society. I'm not an equality campaigner. I will do my best.
You don't care whether women are treated equally with men, Isabel? That's not a concern to you?
Jenny, I have suffered sexism throughout my career on many levels, much of it very, very trivial. And, you know, you roll with the punches. And I think the problem is... In no way do I condone sexism, but I think the problem is that if you start making an enormous fuss about very small things, then you would never have time to do your job. You'd constantly be going off writing to the whips.
Can I say that this wasn't an enormous fuss? I think Isabel Hardman treated this issue with tremendous dignity in just the right way. She didn't name the MP. She just said, this has happened, I think it's unacceptable, and she reported this person to the whips who took action.
But the inevitable consequence of tweeting that, and I have extreme respect for Isabel Hardman. She's a colleague, she knew I was going to write this, we discussed it. I have every respect for her, but the inevitable consequences she well knew of tweeting about it was that there was going to be a firestorm.
Can I add something that's really important about this?
One very brief point.
I happened to be watching a speech by Martin Luther King the other day, who was explaining to a British audience why it was so important that words like Negro should no longer be used. He said, you start with behavioural change.
Totty is not Negro, come on.
No, it's
seriously.
all part of the denigration of women. Then that changes attitudes, and in the end, it changes men's minds. That kind of sexism is what means that women don't get taken seriously and aren't getting to the top of society.
I say choose your battles, choose your battles.
We need to leave it there.
Isabel Hardman chose it well.
Thank you very much indeed.